We're four friends with hot takes on food media.
And we're here to review and recap all kinds of food shows in bite-sized seasons.
Plus, virtual potlucks, cooking adventures, and food memes.
Welcome to Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Hey, it's Justine.
And it's me, Meg.
Welcome back to another episode of Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes. This is season 6 of Pod Appétit. And the new show that we are covering is Hulu's Taste the Nation with Padma Lakshmi. I'd like to welcome our listeners back and welcome new listeners by reminding everyone to say hi on our socials or email us at podappetitpodcast@gmail.com. And we have merch available at podappetit.threadless.com.
Woo.
It's really cool. Check it out.
Before we dive into Taste the Nation, we're going to kick things off by talking about what we've been up to culinary-wise. What's going on in your cocina, Meg?
I recently had a very good sandwich from a food truck essentially called Dad's Luncheonette in Half Moon Bay. The chef, or the dad, is Scott Clark, and he used to be a chef at a Michelin-starred restaurant in San Francisco called Saison. So the chef definitely knows what he's doing, but it's very approachable Americana food. It's very good. And what I had was the mushroom sandwich, which has hen of the woods, aka maitake mushrooms, a soft egg, melted cheese, quick red onion pickles, red oak lettuce, and grilled sourdough. It's very tasty, and I thought to myself, I could probably make a version of this at home because all of these ingredients are pretty easy to get your hands on. So I've made what I call my copycat recipe at home a few times now. It's really good. I love hen of the woods mushrooms. They're so tasty, probably one of my favorite types of mushrooms. And the only thing that I don't have is that the original sandwich has the so-called dad sauce, which I'm like, A, gross, and B, I don't know what that is. I think it's probably just Thousand Island or something like that. But without the secret sauce, it's still quite good. And I did take a photo of my first attempt at the sandwich, but I've made it a couple times now. And my latest attempt was gorgeous, and I really wanted to get all these great photos, but that was when I dropped the kitchen knife on my foot, requiring all the stitches. So I was just like, well, my pinky toe has almost come off, so I guess I won't be staging a photo shoot of my beautiful sandwich right now. But it's a good sandwich. And if you're in the area, go to Dad's Luncheonette. Yeah, Amanda,
Nice.
What have you been up to?
I had an update from last week. I got Nadia's cookbook for Nadia Bakes from the library and did some investigating. I double checked to see if there were any freezing instructions on
The cheesecake.
the cheesecake, and there are none. It just says freeze until ready to eat. And so
Right?
I was just shocked. Absolutely shocked.
Until you're ready to eat it. What if you're ready to eat it right now?
Right. I just thought it was so funny. But yeah, it's a really beautiful cookbook. I wish all of the recipes had a picture. Not all of them do, which is a kind of a cookbook pet peeve for me anyway, of like we've talked about this, like you also eat with your eyes, and if you want to try a recipe, you want to see kind of what it might look like.
I read this really interesting article. I'll try to find it to put it in the show notes, but it was comparing cookbooks published in different countries. So the same cookbook and how they're published in different countries. And apparently having a photo with each recipe is a very American thing. It's actually
Really?
pretty common in other countries to not have a photo for every single recipe. So yeah, I guess as Americans, we just really want to see what that is going to look like before we eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, food photography, very expensive.
Yes.
True. Yeah, and I did look, the strawberry shortcake also still looked like a whole strawberry uncooked in the thing.
Lies.
And then my recipe was one of the ones that did not have a picture with it.
You said yourself, how do you plate this thing? Like, how do
Yeah,
you
there
make
was
it
no way to
presentable?
plate it. Like, that's why when I submitted pictures, I did the full thing, because like as soon as you took it off of, it just became kind of a globby but delicious mess on the plate. But mostly like in between now and our last recording was my husband's birthday, so we've been doing lots of things for that. And we did have German chocolate cake for his birthday, and I learned that German chocolate cake is named that not because it's from Germany, but because the guy's last name was German who made the cake.
What?
Right?
I feel like this is very on theme for this episode.
Yeah. That was a food thing that I learned earlier this week that blew my mind, and I was like, I have to share this on Pod Appétit. What about you, Justine? What have you been up to?
Well, I just never thought that I would become quote-unquote famous on the internet for pesto. Years ago, would I have predicted that? No. It's the number one thing people, like, at me with on Twitter these days. Like, Justine, you haven't talked about pesto in a while. Where's the pesto? Have you seen this pesto? I heard about pesto and thought of you.
You're the pesto queen.
I'm imagining that'll be on your tombstone. Here lies the pesto queen.
Yeah. So yeah, I made a new pesto in addition to still making the same old pesto type. But don't worry, I haven't stopped making pesto just because I stopped talking about it. But I made a new pesto from Oshi Glows. It's a lemony dill pesto, and it's scrummy.
Oh, scrummy. Okay, Mary Berry.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also in Jabibo mood this week. I know I said I wouldn't be, but I am. We'll get into that later. Yeah, very bright. I swear I need to do like a pesto rankings now.
Ooh.
Because
Justine's
Yes.
ultimate pesto ranking, yes.
yeah, because it's definitely like above a cilantro pesto for sure. Above a carrot greens pesto. I rank it similarly to, I really love the kale pesto. Mm-hmm. You know what's funny? I just really never make like a basic like pesto ever. Yeah, I usually actually make a cilantro parsley pesto these days because they're the greens I come into contact with the most. So
Yeah. But you would give a thumbs up to the dill pesto?
oh yeah, y'all should try the dill pesto. I think you'll love it. You just need like a bunch of dill. Okay, order from the store and get like 4 of those little containers that the herbs come in.
It's kind of a big dill.
Oh, she did it.
Woo! Something else I made was a fig chutney because I wanted to get into fig season.
You wanted to use all those little ball jars you got?
Yes. That recipe was from that vegan pantry cookbook that I also picked up. So I've been really going through the cookbooks lately. It's my hobby I do in the evenings now. A lot of new things on the horizon and just revisiting a few old favorites. Send me your pesto recipes.
I love dill. And if you're not already a Patreon supporter of Molly Baz, she does a lot of recipes with dill. She's a big dill fan as well.
Yeah, I think you can only be a big dill fan. You can't be like a moderate dill fan. Well, that was all of us. Now, on the menu for today's episode, we've got Taste the Nation with Padma Lakshmi. The Hulu description is as follows. In Taste the Nation, award-winning cookbook author, host, and executive producer Padma Lakshmi takes audiences on a journey across America, exploring the rich and diverse food culture of various immigrant groups, seeking out the people who have so heavily shaped what American food is today. From indigenous communities to recent immigrant arrivals, Padma breaks bread with Americans across the nation to uncover the roots and relationship between our food, our humanity, and our history, ultimately revealing stories that challenge notions of identity, belonging, and what it means to be American. Wow.
Quite the description.
Quite the thesis statement.
For reals. I want to say, like, LJ's not here, and we're doing this, like, super American show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was finally our time to be the experts. I was waiting for her to ask dumb questions about American food, like we always ask dumb questions about British food. It was our time to shine.
But she can't watch this show because it's only on Hulu, which is why we also chose it when she was still on maternity leave.
It's true. I think it's also worth noting here that we're covering season 1, and season 2 of Taste the Nation will be coming out soon in November of 2021.
That's right. Let's hop into episode 1, Burritos at the Border. Here's the description of that. El Paso was once a part of Mexico. Its border location defines the region's identity and complexity of America's political landscape. Padma eats her way through the city while discovering the origins of America's most beloved cuisines. The burrito.
I really liked this episode. It was not what I was expecting. Basically, I went in knowing, okay, Taste the Nation, it's going to be different American cuisines, and Padma Lakshmi's in it. And then just from the opening of, like, the transportation, like, interrupting them on everything, and then learning so much of it was Border Patrol, mm-hmm. I thought it was a very interesting and strong way to start the show.
Mm-hmm.
The tone of the show is a lot more serious than I was expecting as well. I hadn't watched too many of the commercials or the previews, so it was interesting to see that it definitely more falls into the historical and educational more than about just the food itself. It's mm-hmm. less of a food porn show than, say, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, although there are some similar elements of the travelogue style in a way.
Yeah.
It's definitely more about the people than about the food itself.
I agree. And the depth of the show is already just scratching the itch that I like in terms of what I like to watch.
Yeah, the fact that it's so focused on the idea of America is a country of immigrants, I instantly was like, oh, I think I'm going to like this more than I knew I would. Like... Mm-hmm. Because that's very much how I think of America, I guess. It definitely went into political stuff that I was not expecting, mm-hmm. More so than we've ever covered on this show. I mean, people might guess. I think we're all a little more left-leaning in our feelings about things, but it's not really been something we've talked about on here. But the whole idea of it...
I think if they listen to our Solidarity episodes, hopefully they
got
that impression.
Yes. True. I was just, like you said, Meg, had a more serious tone and more of a depth to this than I was expecting, but really, I didn't want to end on episode 2. A lot of times when we're recording for this show, I'm ready to stop so that we can, like, discuss. But this time I was like, oh, I want to keep watching and learning more.
I think that both episodes, and maybe all the episodes, will focus on this sort of contradiction of assimilation, how she's talking about how some people really need to fight to be recognized for their culture, while others are struggling to hold on to what's already been seamlessly incorporated into American culture, like hot dogs, for example. Most people mm-hmm. probably don't think of that as a German food. So it's already interesting to see these common themes throughout these 2 episodes, and I'm sure that'll be continued throughout the show.
Speaking about all this, I like that at the top of each episode, Padma, the host, is like, I am an immigrant, but I'm also discovering how other people feel about their immigration status or assimilation status, because she's been here since she was 4 years old.
Mm-hmm. I think Padma is a great host so far. She was honestly my favorite part about Top Chef. Tom Colicchio drove me crazy, and I just wanted to be like, shut up, Tom. Let Padma talk. I just think that she has a very obvious passion for food, which kind of has to be a prerequisite for a food host, you know? She's very knowledgeable. She's willing to try just about any type of food. She's just so beautiful and cool and fashionable. And I'm like, how can I be like you, Padma? But I do really like that she's coming from this place where she, like you said, is an immigrant. So it's a story and a question that means a lot to her personally. And you can see that she's exploring herself as she's interviewing the people.
There's a couple things that I've already known about from, like, say, Rick Martinez and his shows, and like Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. Like we had our old friend Nixtamalization show up again.
Yeah. Yes.
Shout out to nixtamalization.
We got there.
You have to drink a little first and then say it like 4 times fast, just like that.
But I do like it. It did go politically deeper, even into like, hey, like flour is come from Spanish, so like corn tortillas are the more Mexican tortillas.
Yeah, I found that really interesting because that's just like a little thing my husband and I discuss sometimes is like, which tortilla would you prefer for this? Do you want to do like flour or corn? And like kind of go back and forth. And like with my family, my uncle is allergic to corn, so a lot of times we go flour for things. But yeah, I loved how it went into that history of like even this flour tortilla, which we all think of as a very like Mexican thing, still has to do with colonization hundreds of years ago. And I thought the corn tortillas that she made with that chef with the nixtamalization words, I thought it was really interesting how it wasn't more of that like bleached corn, I guess, you know, like it seemed like more of a natural color and everything. And
I was wondering if that was blue corn. It almost looked like blue corn tortillas to me.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if it was blue corn or if it just, I mean, there's so many different kinds of corn.
Right, yeah, and I like that point, I mean, it didn't get said, more shown in that when you go and get varieties of what is in season, you know, you don't get that whole, like, commercialization, which I feel like they could have tapped into more. They did a little bit of, like, oh, you see burritos sold in other places, they're freaking huge. Or like if they get into like stuff with like Chipotle or Taco Bell, like that sort of stuff, I wish they sort of dived into, which they kind of did a little with like saying like, oh, Americans, you love tacos, but you hate Mexicans, like that sort of stuff. But a lot of foods, and I've been thinking about this lately, that are sold commercially worldwide have all sort of standardized things to them because they need to be commercially sold and packaged. That leads to a lot of more techniques that aren't as quote unquote natural. Like think of orange juice, think of like what an orange tastes like, and think about how orange juice brands taste and how they have to be different, but they have to be the same bottle in Maine and in California. Like that sort of stuff. I mean, like that's like a whole different tangent. It reminds me of like
Sunny D when we were kids. Was like everybody's like, oh, Sunny D, and my mom never bought it. And then when I tasted it for the first time, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, it didn't taste anything like an orange. But like that, yeah. But like you said, it's the industrialization of the food and everything.
Yeah. And I think it is something to think about. Of course, we always say think about like where you get your food, think about like what restaurants you're supporting. I don't know if it happened with you guys, but there was a little commercial that popped up in front of each episode that said support local restaurants. Basically.
I thought that was interesting because the Hulu that we have with my mother-in-law is the commercial free. So when it popped up and instantly like had the little countdown of like, here's a commercial, I was like, huh, that's weird. And then I realized what it was. And I was like, no, I'm totally fine with this. Like, this is very appropriate to support local restaurants and make sure, especially with the pandemic.
What you were saying about Chipotle and Taco Bell, for example, how everything is just very cookie cutter. It's very unified. When you go to Taco Bell and order a taco, it's going to be exactly the same as the taco you ordered from there 2 years ago or 2 years from now. And if you look at, say, the ingredients on the Taco Bell menu or Chipotle menu, it's, let's say, 20 ingredients just sort of mix and matched into different form factors. So the goal here is not to make an authentic food or to even necessarily make good food. I mean, I enjoy Taco Bell and Chipotle probably as much as the next person does, but it really does lose any sort of connection with seasonality or regionality. If you look at Rick Martinez's videos on YouTube or his upcoming cookbook, there's so many different regions in Mexico. A taco or a burrito from northern Mexico is going to be totally different from one in central Mexico. So I did really like that this particular episode of Taste the Nation focused on just El Paso, because it was a slice of here's this one very specific part in the world where it really is this Venn diagram of where Mexico and America meet. It's this border city where a bunch of people who work there literally cross over from Mexico across the border every morning to go to work. So I do like that it took a very focused look. I agree that it might be interesting to get a wider look, but I'm getting the impression that this show is going to find one specific spot, really focus on its history and its people and how all of these factors have come together to make the food culture as it is today in that area.
Yeah. And I think that's something, at least 2 episodes in, and I know we're focusing on the first one, I'm liking that part of the travelogue, is that it is kind of focusing in, and that this really was an exploration of different burritos. Like we talked about the flour and the corn, different tortillas, and then the last chef that she went and to his home, and that he was doing this totally different, like, crepe style corn tortilla,
fancy fusion.
Fusion, which I was just like,
sure.
I was just like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, I just love how it was so specifically about burritos, but then the way, like, it encompassed so many different things just with that one type of food. And whether it was the food itself or talking, like you said, about this being a border city, and then also seeing the different restaurants and who is working in them and who is running them. Like when she was interviewing the guy who owned that one restaurant, who...
Maynard.
Yes, Maynard. But Maynard is also, like, his family are also Syrian immigrants. Like, it just, it's so fascinating because, again, it comes back to, yeah, he's like, oh, I'm all American. Yeah, I voted for both Bushes. I voted for Reagan. I voted for Trump. But then he's like, but I love Mexican people. And it's a shame that it's taking them so long to get through the border. And then also his family were immigrants a generation before. Like, it's just such a fascinating look at how this one food encompasses all of these different kinds of food and all of these different kinds of people and cultures.
Yeah, and all of these conversations.
Yeah.
It's a good format for the show because you can zoom in really close or you can zoom out really far. And I do think that it does a good job of talking about broader political stuff. I mean, obviously, the presidential election influences all of America versus let's just take a look at this one car wash in El Paso. I think it does a good job of balancing the little picture with the big picture.
But I do like that the like main wrap up of the episode was if we understand each other's food and cultures, that opens up doors instead of putting up walls.
Yep.
I will
Metaphor.
say I am really enjoying the show so far. Yet sometimes the voiceovers give me a little bit of a feeling of the Blue Raja character from Mystery Men, which is to say sometimes I think the summation of the episode can come off as a little bit trite. It's like, I agree with what it's saying, but it verges on corny for me a little bit sometimes. I would rather just listen to the interviewees expressing themselves, I guess, instead of having Padma put a nice little button on it.
Do you think she's writing those herself, or do you think that's a writer?
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
So they pay people to do that.
Yeah. So the writer needs to be a little less trite.
Yes. That's my first
I like
note.
cute buttons. I'm a button person. Put a button on it is what I say.
She did ask some of the folks she interviewed what makes the perfect burrito. So what's the perfect burrito for you guys?
I don't know if I've ever had the perfect burrito.
You're still chasing the perfect burrito.
Yeah.
I think it depends on where it's coming from. Like, I know what my perfect burrito is at Chipotle, but I also know, like, what my perfect burrito is if I'm making it at home.
That's true.
You know, like, it depends on the setting. I've also had Mexican food at least 3 or 4 times this week.
Wow.
I do love Mexican food.
Yeah, I think I mentioned before, I'm like, I didn't really grow up on Mexican food. We definitely didn't really. Oh, you don't want to know how we made burritos in my.
Oh, but we do. What is a New England burrito, Justine?
I mean, there is mayonnaise involved.
No.
Ooh, that sounds so Midwestern of you.
Just saying, like, I don't have a lot of. I definitely don't have like really authentic Mexican food experience. Although when I did live in Chicago, I did live under an L station, and also under that L station was a Mexican restaurant, which I used to get tortas from all the time.
Tortas.
Because they were cheap, so a torta and a horchata. And that place was good. I just basically, I don't know, I was poor. I got like the cheapest thing with the cheapest stuff, you know?
Yeah.
As long as the burrito mostly has black beans, I'll probably be happy with it. But there hasn't really been a burrito that I've met that I didn't like.
I currently have in my fridge the leftovers of a burrito bar that was brought to work for catering this week.
Oh, right. The burrito bar.
Yes. Can you tell we're into bars in the Midwest? I had the potato bar a few weeks ago, and now the burrito bar.
Classic. All right, that wraps up episode 1. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with episode 2. And we're back, and we're talking about episode 2 of Taste the Nation, the All American Wiener.
Time to talk about wieners.
The description is hot dogs, hamburgers, pretzels. Many think these foods are quintessentially American, but their origins are actually German. In Milwaukee, Padma meets descendants of early German immigrants who hold on to their heritage. It's like that scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the parade.
Yeah.
That and sausage.
So I want to share my story of my experience with the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile.
Yes.
Oh my God, please do.
So I was driving home from college, as I did often when I was a college student. And it was kind of late in the day, and there was very creepy fog everywhere. It was bad driving conditions because tons of fog, could not see very far in front of me. I'm on this windy road, and out of the mist comes the Wienermobile.
Oh my God.
So it was the most dramatic Wienermobile I've ever seen because it just emerged from the fog unannounced and then disappeared.
Oh my God, I want like a dramatic recreation of that. You're like driving, then you're like, what is that?
Is that
the Wienermobile?
a giant hot dog?
Oh my God.
I was in the car with my dad at the time, so he can confirm that it was not just a hallucination, that it was not just a ghost Wienermobile. Or maybe it was, but we both saw it.
Maybe it was. Seeing that next week on the X-Files or Supernatural.
It was like the Flying Dutchman. It was the ghost Wienermobile. So Padma spends much of the episode in a Wienermobile while she interviews local food experts.
I thought that was interesting that essentially like the idea is that the Wienermobile is taking her from location to location.
Why have a limo when you can have the Wienermobile?
Right.
It's like the same thing.
So I have a lot of German heritage, and we had at my grandma's a framed, not photo, like the framed document of like the immigration of my great grandfather from Germany to the US on Ellis Island, and like there was this whole thing. And so much of this food is just, I'm like, oh, this is like the stuff I literally grew up with at my grandma's house. Though I also worried about Justine with the amount of meat being processed throughout the sausage casing stuff and the schnitzel. I know
and
when you
Padma eating a pig's face.
It reminds me of like growing up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
When she started the episode at a baseball stadium, I'm like, yes, baseball food. Who doesn't love it?
Truly, who doesn't love baseball food?
Well, and I feel like this, like, just the fact that we just, it's like home and, you know, that's what I grew up with. That's kind of like the point of this episode, too, is the way that German heritage had just become American heritage. Mm-hmm. And just a very interesting, like, with the history in this episode, whether, you know, talking about the different, like, the sausage and how it came over and who first started, you know, like the lore of the first hot dog in a bun and all of those different things. And the thing that really hit me was the local German restaurant guy, the Kegel, which when Padma was like, so are you related to, I've been doing Kegels the whole time. Oh my God, I cracked up. But that place looked so much like, we have a local over 100-year-old German restaurant in Columbus called Schmidt's, and it looks so similar. And it's still like the family run business that's been around since the early 1900s. And that's a big thing. Like, my sister Faith loves to go there for her birthday every year. And they do all this, like, they make their own sausage, like they were at the sausage plant before. And I was just like, so much of this, I was like, oh man, Columbus and Milwaukee have a lot of similarities that I was unaware of.
I like when they talk about, like, oh, you don't regularly, like, think about, oh, we're going to go to German food for dinner tonight. But I mean, there are times when I'm thinking, oh yeah, I've been to a similar beer garden that looks like that. There actually is one here in LA that I went to years ago. I got a really good cider at. Delicious cider. Been chasing that high ever since. No.
I feel like maybe I've sought out German food maybe more often than the average person, only because coincidentally I have several friends who have married German men. So men straight from Germany. So just in hanging out with these people socially, these guys are like, I need some German food. So I feel like I've been to actually quite a few, sought quite a few out. There's a couple of beer gardens very close by that I believe have some sort of, I guess, authentic ownership. Like, it actually is owned and run by German people. There's a German bakery that I've been to several times that is super good. Ooh. They seem to really feature poppy seeds in a lot of German baked goods. So I like German food. Like you said, Justine, who doesn't like baseball food? It is so woven into American culture, this German food. And, you know, of course, the hot dog that you buy from the store is not going to be the same as the bratwurst sausage that you get handmade from maybe a local German butcher or something like that. But it's close enough that I feel like it's very easily accepted by the average American.
Oh, that just made me remember there's a really good wiener place here in LA also that has a whole variety of meats that they put in the sausages, and there's a couple of the vegan options. I haven't been there in a while either. Pandemic.
Yeah, we've got some specifically like hot dog places. There's a local place in downtown Columbus called Dirty Frank's, and they have I know. But it's also a very cool place, and they do like alcoholic slushies and everything. And again, because of the pandemic, I haven't been there in a long time. But since I've moved up here to Marysville, I had to take a different way home the other day and realized there's some sort of like hot dog place here in town also. So I'm like, oh, like I didn't realize there was a specific hot dog place, and it has some sort of clever name as well, but I can't remember what it was. But it's like such just a part of like, yeah, you know, hot dog, sausages, like whatever. And like you said, there's so many different kinds. And I thought it was interesting, was it the sausage place that she went to, and how they had like 126 different varieties.
Usingers?
Usingers.
That's it. Yeah, that there's just so many different types that you can make. And that there are vegan kinds now, and there's like all different kinds that you can have. There's such a variety.
I also liked the conversation about the beer culture that is part and parcel with German food culture. The German Fest that she went to in Milwaukee looked really fun. Apparently they called it German Fest instead of Oktoberfest because it took place in July instead of September. And actually, I took a quick peek at the calendar, and now as we're recording, we're kind of right in the middle of Oktoberfest traditionally. So It's a good time to talk about German food and beer.
Yeah, I just saw an advertisement for Columbus's Oktoberfest earlier this week.
German listeners, maybe Andrea or Andrea, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce her name. Let us know why it's called Oktoberfest when it starts in September.
Yeah, shout out to our German listeners.
I was very excited, and I thought about Andrea when Padma was speaking about the soft pretzels because the woman who made the pretzels was saying, oh, we make these with real lye. When we were first talking about pretzels on the show, it was through Nadia Bakes, and she used baking soda, but apparently the traditional, authentic way is to use lye when making pretzels, and that gives the pretzel its dark color and a little bit of the tangy flavor and that, that chewy sort of outside.
I was waiting for them to talk about butter, but nobody
I know.
did.
That's what I was waiting for too.
I thought it was interesting to making connections as like we're kind of going through the series, and I know we'll do more of this in a few weeks when we digest everything. But the idea that like in the first episode in the nixtamalization, they use lye for that, and then here with the pretzels they also use lye for that, and just to see this way like an ingredient like that you use to create something else is used in multiple cultures in different ways, and both of those have come to make different kinds of food that we all eat in the US. I just found that interesting that there was such, like, you don't think of like, oh, burritos and pretzels as like the same thing. They're not, but like they still use some of the same processes and ideas to get a taste to them or a feel.
To quote one of Padma's voiceovers, the thread that connects everyone is food. It travels and it unites us.
I feel like we're going to have to end this season with like a voiceover of Meg quoting Padma.
My fake voiceover might be kind of fun.
I thought that the beer making segment was a bit boring for me. I kind of tuned out a little. The guy in the garage.
I feel like it was okay. I just wondered what made him the expert on this. I feel like the other people that they've interviewed so far, I'm like, oh, I understand why I'm getting this person's perspective. And there's a lot of home brewers. And I'm not sure this guy is necessarily that much more of an expert than the next person, but I don't know. I don't know his bona fides.
There were a couple of just brief shots of like trophies and medals and things that it seemed that he had won in brewing contests.
That's true.
But there was no context. Whereas I feel like in the previous episode it had been like, oh, this guy's a chef here, and even though she was like at somebody's house, it specified like what his bona fides were. Whereas this guy was like, I went to Austria and then I came back and started brewing beer.
Yeah. Well, he's a gentleman connecting with his culture, heritage, and passing it on.
I mean,
blah, blah.
Home brewing in your garage is a very American dude thing to do.
It is quintessentially American to take up brewing as a hobby.
My stepdad did it for a while when I was growing up. Like, I think we all know somebody who is like, oh man, you got to taste this alcohol that I made in my basement. Or
Yeah, I thought this episode definitely a little lighter than the previous episode. But still, I'm like, hey, Midwest represent. Like,
yeah.
It got a little bit more serious when I was talking about World War II and how German immigrants in America kind of hid their ancestry so that they wouldn't be discriminated against, or so that they wouldn't be, potentially put in internment camps and what have you. So it did have its serious notes, but I think the average American TV show is a little bit hesitant to touch on Germany and World War II in a sympathetic way, So it's just like, it was bad for Americans that also happened to be Germans. But it was interesting that they talked about that a little bit.
I liked that in the voiceover that it was specified, it was easier for them to, quote unquote, like kind of fade in and hide amongst Americans without showing their Germanness because they are white.
Because they're white, yeah. And a lot of other immigrants don't have that, I guess, privilege. I don't know if that's the right word or not. But
yeah, in
the cases where it's safer for you to maybe blend in more, it's not always an option for everyone.
And I think that I'm glad that was included because it's true. Like, it's not, and it also, I just feel like shows another part of, I think, Americanness. Not that all Americans do this, but it is a thing, a tendency to oh no, that's the bad guy in culture in some way, whether it's World War II or 9/11, and then like now let's vilify anyone who sounds like or looks like that person. And it's just upsetting that that is a part of American culture to some extent, but it also shows like that's been going on for 100 years since World War I was 100 years ago. Part of being an American is not just like rah rah America, but also looking and seeing what our faults are and dealing with those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That wraps up the first 2 episodes of Taste the Nation. I almost said Nadia Bakes. Now we're going to see what's on our back burner for today. Rick Martinez's new book, Mi Cocina, is available for pre-order and will be released spring 2022. And you can order your copy on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and signed copies are available at Strand and Now Serving here in LA.
Yeah, speaking of support your locally run restaurants, I would also say support your local bookstores where you can. And if you do that, you can get a signed copy from Rick the Sugar Man Martinez himself.
I forgot about the Sugar Man. But if you can't wait for that, Carla Lalli Music's cookbook, That Sounds So Good, 100 real-life recipes for every day of the week, a cookbook, will be out on 10/21. It is also available for pre-order now.
Too many colons.
What a title. And by the time this episode airs, there will have been a new episode of the Great British Bake Off. Yes, they snuck up on us and just last week announced that the episodes will be airing on Netflix on Fridays starting the 24th.
Oh, damn. I missed that announcement, too.
I'm so excited. I am ready for more Jabibo.
I'm going to watch live with you guys this time, too. Though maybe not on Friday. I have a Fast and Furious movie marathon planned for that day.
Okay, then.
Sleepover style.
Well, now we have some shout-outs. So, shout-out to the Edmonton tourist who brings up a topic that just won't die on this podcast. Butter or mayo on grilled cheese? And is this because Americans are obsessed with mayo?
Short answer, yes. I'm a recent convert to mayo instead of butter on grilled cheese, but I really like it. They both achieve what you want, which is having fat/oil to crisp up your sandwich. But the reason why I like mayo is that I just don't usually have the foresight or the patience to let butter soften up enough so that it becomes easily spreadable so that you get nice coverage all over your sandwich. So it's just a lot easier to put mayo on the whole thing.
So I didn't say this to her when she had mentioned this on social media, but my mom did mayo on the inside of the grilled cheese, so it was like against the cheese, and then like grilled it in either like olive oil or butter or whatever. So I guess a little of both.
Yeah, why not both?
Why not both?
Why not both? I would suggest trying it. I mean, maybe not you, Edmonton tourist. I know you're not a mayo fan, but as you were agog about my ketchup and mayo together at the diner I went to.
Shout out to Nat on Twitter who atted me immediately when she saw there was a vegan in Jabibo this year.
Ooh.
There's already controversy with her, apparently, even though it hasn't even aired.
What is it? What?
Oh, apparently I don't know what the proper word is. It's not dressage, but she does horse competition shows. Mm-hmm. And some people are questioning how can you be vegan and subject a horse to shows. So
okay.
I don't have a comment, but yeah, drama.
Well, maybe she's not vegan. Maybe she just has a plant-based diet. So, the labeling.
Is that different?
Is it different to be vegan versus having a plant-based diet?
Yes.
One is a diet, one is ideals, and there are many reasons to be vegan. You can do it just for health. You can do it for environmental reasons. You can do it because you love animals so much.
I honestly did not know that was, I just assumed vegan just meant plant-based diet. Like, I thought they were one and the same.
Nah, and there are even, like, so many more labels that people can opt to use if they want, or people can just eat how they feel like eating. it starts to get political,
I see. Oh, as everything does these days.
I mean, some people might at me for being like, you ate figs.
Because of wasps?
Because of wasps.
Wait, what?
Figs are actually a flower, and they need, like, a wasp in there to, like, pollinate it, and then, like, it, like, eats the wasp. So as the fig is forming, it actually is digesting the wasp. You're not technically eating the bug itself because it's been completely broken down by the enzymes at that point, but it is like a relationship where they need each other to
exist.
But I mean, like, so many things are pollinated, and there's factory pollination, for like almonds, for avocados. Like, it's, like I said, it can get political.
Oh, man.
So you could be a level 5 vegan that doesn't eat anything that casts a shadow.
Gold star vegan. Tune in next week as we judge whether Justine is vegan enough or not.
That's what I love that. Shout out to Mrs. Casper, just based off the fact that she tweeted that she wanted a shout out in every episode this season. It's dedication. Thanks for getting in touch with us on social media, sharing what you think of our foods, the shows we're watching. Leave us a review if you can on Apple Podcasts, or email us via our email, and we'll give you a shout out right here. Next episode, we are watching the next 2 episodes of Taste the Nation, Don't Mind If I Dosa, and The Gullah Way. Bye!
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes.
We'd love to hear from you, so find us on Twitter and Instagram at pod_appétit.
And on Facebook at Pod Appétit Podcast.
You can also email us at podappetitpodcast@gmail.com and find all of our episodes on our website, podappetitpodcast.com.
Hey y'all, this is Heidi Bennett of the Vibrant Visionaries podcast. Come on over and hang out with us. I talk with tons of indie filmmakers, artists, musicians, comedians. We have casual conversations and talk about creative process and the inner workings of creating all sorts of cool indie stuff. Lots of horror films, all sorts of kind of weird, fringy stuff too, but it's very positive and super fun. You can find us at vibrantvisionaries.com. Come give us a whirl. Ciao!